My name is Isabel Alvarez, 72 years old, and last night, it was my own son, Mateo, who beat me until my lips split open just because I brought my granddaughter, Sophie, a home without asking him first, just because I refused to let a 3-year-old child sit alone in the freezing snow on the porch. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and leave a comment saying what time it is where you are. I can still hear the wind cutting into my ears when I stepped into Mateo's yard that afternoon. El Paso had been unusually cold for days, snow covering the small road in front of his house. I came only to bring some fresh tamales I had steamed that morning. I always did that on weekends, even though Mateo rarely showed any gratitude. But as soon as I approached the door, I was stunned by a sight I could never have imagined. Sophia, my granddaughter, was curled up on the step, wearing only a thin sweater, her tiny hands shaking uncontrollably, her nose bright red from the cold. The temperature at that time was about -2 degrees Celsius. The front door was slightly open, and the laughter of Mateo and my daughter-in-law, Camila, drifted out from inside. They were eating dinner. The fajitas were still steaming, and the wine glasses still sparkled under the light. The inside was warm and cozy, while out here, my 3-year-old granddaughter sat abandoned. I trembled more from anger than from cold. "Sophia, how long have you been sitting here?" I asked as I knelt and held her. Her voice broke, and her lips were turning purple. "Abuela, I am cold." I did not think any further. I only knew I had to pick her up, wrap the scarf I had around her, and go straight back to my house 2 blocks away. I raised Mateo alone after my husband died. I knew he was hot-tempered and selfish, but I never thought he could be cruel enough to leave his child outside in the snow like this. Maybe, they argued, or maybe he was punishing her for spilling a drink. Whatever the reason was, no one should ever treat a child like that. When I got home, I gave Sophia some warm chocolate, changed her into dry clothes, and called Mateo to tell him I had taken her. But he did not answer. I thought maybe he was angry or did not hear the phone. I did not know he had seen me through the window. He knew I took the girl. He did not call. He did not ask. He did not care. And because of that, when my door burst open that night, I was not prepared for what would happen. Around 9 in the evening, I was helping Sophia fall asleep when the front door was pounded so hard it seemed the hinges would break. "Mom, open this damn door," Mateo shouted, his voice filled with rage. I was so startled, I dropped the towel I was holding. Sophia woke up crying. "Abuela, papi, angry." I hurried to calm her, then ran to the door, afraid he would break the lock. The moment I opened it slightly, Mateo stormed in like a hurricane. His face was flushed, and his eyes tore into me as if he wanted to devour me. "What gives you the right to take my child without permission?" he roared. I tried to stay calm. "Mateo." She was sitting in the snow. She was freezing. I could not. "I did not ask you," he shouted louder. "You do not tell me how to raise my child. Never." I stepped back. I could smell a faint trace of alcohol on him, but his voice was terrifyingly steady. "I only wanted to help." "Help?" he scoffed, his eyes darkening. "By making the neighbors think I'm some horrible father? By making Camila cry all evening because she thought someone kidnapped our daughter?" My throat tightened. "Mateo, I saw her sitting alone. And you think you are a hero? He stepped closer, his voice lowering. You cause trouble. You always cause trouble. I stammered. Do not say that. Sophia is just a child. She needs to be warm. A slap flew at me so fast I could not move. My head spun, and the taste of blood rushed into my mouth. I staggered and nearly fell. Mateo, I whispered in disbelief. You hit your mother? He did not answer. He only stared at me as though I were a stranger who had walked into his life and destroyed everything. Then he grabbed my arm, squeezing so hard I felt my bones ache. You will bring Sophia back, he said through clenched teeth. And you will apologize to Camila right now. I shivered. No. I cannot let the child go out in the cold night like that, no matter what. He hit me again. Not a slap, a punch to my mouth. I fell onto the tile floor. Blood dripped from my torn lip onto my hand. My heart pounded in my ears. I could not believe the person standing in front of me, the child I carried and raised, could do this to me. I will take my daughter back, Mateo said coldly, jerking his chin toward the bedroom. And you need to remember that you are 72 years old. You do not get to decide anything anymore. I tried to stand, but my legs were shaking. Mateo, I raised you. How can you? Do not bring up the past, he screamed like a madman. You no longer have any right in this family. I backed away, one hand covering my torn lip and one hand bracing against the table so I would not fall. I had never seen that look in his eyes. Cold, empty. As if I were no longer his mother. As if I were just an old burden, an old maid who had outlived her usefulness. I trembled and whispered one final sentence. Mateo, the child needs love. He laughed dryly. You do not get to teach me. Take care of yourself first. He grabbed Sophia and headed toward the door. She screamed and cried, but Mateo shouted, Quiet! I ran to the door and shouted desperately, Mate, oh, it is freezing. Do not take her out in those thin clothes, Mateo. But the door slammed in my face. He did not look back. There was no regret. I stood there as blood dripped from my lip onto the floor, drop by drop. Each drop felt like a cut straight into my heart. At 72 years old, I had never felt so humiliated and broken. That night, I sat alone in the kitchen. I did not cry. I had no tears left. Only a coldness remained, like the wind outside blowing through my chest. Cold from the outside and the inside. Cold enough to make every warm memory of Mateo fall away like melting snow. I asked myself, where did I go wrong? How did my son become someone who could punch his mother simply because she tried to save her granddaughter from the cold? And that night, I understood one thing. The most painful blows do not come from strangers. They come from the children we love with our entire lives. I could not sleep that night. I sat alone in the kitchen, leaning against the old chair that had been with me for more than 20 years, listening to the ticking of the wall clock. Every tick sent a sharp pulse through my lip, where Mateo punched me last night. But the deepest pain was not in my lip. It was buried inside my chest like a stone pressing down on my heart. 72 years old, yet I was still being beaten by the very child I brought into this world. It was humiliating. Near midnight, I went into the bathroom, turned on the light, and faced the old mirror hanging on the wall. The yellow glow revealed everything clearly. My lip was swollen to twice its size, dark bruises forming on both sides. The left side of my cheek was blotched with purple. My hair was a tangled mess, a few gray strands stuck to dried streaks of blood. I barely recognized myself, but what hurt me more was the sentence I muttered without thinking. Mateo, you really hit your mother. I repeated that sentence so many times that even my own voice began to sound like that of a stranger. When I washed my face, the cold water stung my bruises like needles. I gritted my teeth. I had lived my whole life enduring pain. From overnight shifts in the geriatric ward at Providence, to years of raising my child alone, to the aches of growing old. But never had the pain taken the shape of my own son's fist. I took some ice from the freezer, wrapped it in a towel, and pressed it against my lip. Every time I pressed harder, I saw Mateo in my mind, snatching Sophia from Camilla and shooting me a look that held no trace of love, as if I were the enemy, as if I were trash he needed to clear out of his life. Humiliation tightened around my throat. The next morning, I was awakened by the doorbell. The clock read 6:45. The outside was still blanketed in morning mist. I sat up quickly. My lip hurt so badly I could not open my mouth wide. At first, I thought Mateo had come back to cause trouble. My heartbeat pounded wildly in my chest. But when I peeked through the curtain, I saw Clarissa, the neighbor who lived one street lamp away, standing in front of my door holding a white box. I exhaled in relief, but did not open immediately. I did not want her to see my face. She knocked twice more, gently, but firmly. Isabel, are you there? I brought some fresh pan dulce for you. I could not hide. I did not want her to worry. I opened the door slightly, keeping my face partly behind it. Clarissa, you are here early. She squinted and inspected me carefully. Isabel, what happened to your lip? It is nothing. I tripped on the stairs last night. Clarissa looked straight into my eyes. The gaze of a woman who had lived long enough to know the difference between truth and lies. She did not question further. She did not push. She simply sighed and handed me the box of pastries. Isabel, for women like us, especially when we are older, there is nothing shameful about needing help. I lowered my head. If you knew the truth, you would think I am pitiful. Clarissa placed her hand on my shoulder. No, I would think you are strong, because weak people cannot stand back up after whatever it is I think you are hiding. Her words tightened my throat. I wanted to tell her everything, but shame pressed down on me like a weight. I could not speak. She did not ask again. She understood. The moment she turned to leave, I suddenly burst into tears. It felt like holding back tears for hours, only to have one gentle sentence break everything open. By 8 in the morning, my phone rang. Mateo's name flashed on the screen. I stared at it for a long moment, panic rising in my chest. I did not want to answer, but if I ignored him, he would show up at my door. I answered, breathing heavily. "Why are you calling me?" Mateo's voice was cold like steel. "Last night, you made Camila cry her eyes out. If you know what is good for you, you will come here and apologize." "Mateo, I only wanted to protect Sophia." "Shut up." His shout sliced through my ear. "My daughter is mine to discipline. You are not allowed to take her like you are kidnapping her. At 10 o'clock, you will come to my house. Knock properly, apologize properly, and tell Camila you were wrong." I forced myself to stay composed. "Mateo, you hit me last night. I still—" "Are you not listening to me?" Mateo growled. "If you do not come, do not blame me when I cut off your support. I told you, you cannot live alone." My chest tightened. He knew my weakness. I only had a small nurse's pension. I no longer drove. I no longer had the strength to work. And Mateo controlled most of my savings, which was my mistake for trusting him when he said he would help me manage my finances. Then he added a sentence that made my blood run cold. "You have nothing in this world except me. And I do not want people thinking you are some crazy old woman who creates problems." I stayed silent because part of what he said was true. I was alone, and he was taking advantage of that loneliness. By the end of the call, Mateo repeated, 10 o'clock. Do not make me come over there." And he hung up. No goodbye. No asking if I was hurt. No word about the punch from last night. As if it were completely normal to him. The entire morning, I could do nothing but stare at the old clock on the wall. 9 o'clock, 9:15, 9:40. Every minute was a knife cutting into my dignity. At last, I stood up to change clothes. I chose a gray turtleneck sweater to hide the bruises. I put a bit of powder on my lip to cover the split, but the powder did not hide anything. It only made me look worse. I looked into the mirror and asked myself, why am I doing this? Why do I have to apologize when I was right? But I knew the answer, because I was afraid Mateo would lose control again, because I was afraid he might hurt Sophia, because I was afraid he would hit me again. I was 72. I could not withstand another blow. It was still cold when I stepped outside and walked the 2 blocks to Mateo's house. Yesterday's snow had not melted. The road was slippery, and I held on to Clarissa's wooden fence for balance. When I reached his front door, my heart felt heavy. I knocked softly. No response. I knocked again. The door opened. Camila stood there in a silk nightgown, her face still swollen from crying. But instead of sympathy, her gaze held pure contempt. "You are here," she said flatly. "Come in." I stepped inside slowly, avoiding Sophia's eyes. She was sitting on the sofa hugging a teddy bear, her big round eyes red from crying. Mateo walked out of the kitchen with a cup of coffee in his hand. He did not even look at me. He simply said, "Say it." I swallowed hard and tried to keep my voice steady. "Camila, I am sorry for taking Sophia last night. I was afraid she was cold." Camila crossed her arms. "If you were worried about her being cold, you should have called us. You had no right to take her." I bowed my head. "Yes, I was wrong." Mateo nodded, like a manager acknowledging an employee's mistake. Then, in front of his wife, in front of my granddaughter, in the very house I once helped pay for. Mateo said something that shattered the rest of my dignity. If you interfere in my family again, I swear I will make sure you regret it. You are old. Do not think you have any power in this house. And in front of his little girl, Mateo added in a calm voice, as if he were stating a fact. Last night, you tripped at your front door. No one hit you. Do you understand? I froze. He wanted me to lie. He wanted me to humiliate myself to cover his violence. My breath trembled. Mateo, you are forcing me. He pointed directly at my face. Do you understand? There was no other choice. My hand turned cold as it shook by my side while I whispered, I understand. And in that moment, Sophia looked at me, her wide, innocent eyes filled with fear and confusion. She was learning how to stay silent, just like me, just like Mateo once did. I realized instantly that the humiliation I endured today was something that would be passed to the next generation if I did nothing. I looked at Mateo, I looked at Camila, I looked at Sophia, and I knew I could not continue living like this. But at that moment, I did not know that the humiliation of that morning was only the beginning of something even worse waiting ahead of me. I returned home after that humiliating morning with legs that could barely feel the ground. Every step felt like a blade twisting into my heart. I was 72 years old, with only so many years left to live. Yet, I still had to apologize to people 40 years younger than me, just to earn the right not to be beaten. When I locked the door and leaned against the old wooden frame, I felt all the strength drain from my body. I slid down to the floor, knees pulled to my chest, tears falling silently. There was no sobbing. The tears of the elderly no longer cry out for help. They fall because the sorrow has already sunk too deep to rise into sound. I felt empty. So empty, it suffocated me. But there was something I did not know. Inside that emptiness, something was taking root. Something I thought I had lost years ago. My sense of dignity. Around 3 in the afternoon, when my eyes were swollen from crying, I heard a car braking hard outside the gate. I jolted upright. I feared Mateo had returned, but when I looked through the window, I saw a small figure with slightly curled hair and a deep blue cardigan. Clarissa. She was carrying a large bag, walking quietly into my yard. She did not knock, only opened the gate and came straight in like family. I opened the door before she could knock. Isabel, Clarissa said, her eyes full of concern. Your face. Dear God, the bruises are worse than this morning. I lowered my head. I told you, I tripped. Stop lying to me. Clarissa cut in, firm but warm. I know a man's handprint when I see one. I have lived 68 years, Isabel. Her words pulled me out of my pretending, out of the mask I had worn since last night. I wanted to deny it, but my lips trembled. Clarissa gently guided me to a chair. Sit down. I made caldo de pate. Eat something. When she set the warm bowl in front of me, the steam carried the scent of onions, cilantro, and chicken. My eyes burned again. Isabel, she said when I could not even lift a spoon, you cannot go on like this. I shook my head. My voice cracked. They are my family, My children. Family is not the people who make you live in fear every day, Clarissa said slowly. Family is not the people who raise a hand to you when you do the right thing. My throat tightened. Clarissa, I cannot call the police. Mateo will keep Sophia from me forever. No. Clarissa placed her hand on my shoulder. It is the opposite. If you do nothing, the child is the one who will suffer later. I stared at her, eyes widening. Isabel, you were a nurse. You know better than anyone. A child who grows up in a violent home never forgets. They learn from it, and one day, Sophia could become you. Or worse, she could become Mateo. Those last two sentences struck me like a hammer to the chest. I struggled to breathe. But what can I do? I am just an old woman. Clarissa sat across from me, arms folded. I have evidence. I blinked. What evidence? She looked toward the yard and lowered her voice. Last night, when I heard yelling from your house, I opened my window. I saw Mateo pounding on your door. I was so worried that this morning. Clarissa cleared her throat. Isabel, I placed a small camera in the cactus bush outside your yard. It captured Mateo pushing you and raising his hand at you again at your door. I went completely still. You did that. Since when? Since I saw you hiding bruises and avoiding everyone, she answered softly. I did not want to intrude, but I could not watch you being hurt. I covered my mouth as if someone had touched the rawest part of my wound. Clarissa, you helped me, even though I never told you anything. We are neighbors, Isabel. But more than that, we are women, and women must protect each other. I began to cry again, this time not from pain, but because for the first time in years, I no longer felt completely alone. Clarissa opened her bag, took out a folder, and placed it in front of me. This is the card of Brenda Salazar. She is a friend of mine who works in the El Paso County District Attorney's Office. She specializes in domestic violence and elder abuse cases. My hand trembled as I held the card. No, I cannot. If Mateo finds out, Mateo will not find out, Clarissa said firmly. You are not reporting him out of vengeance. You are reporting him for your safety and for Sophia's. I placed the card on the table and inhaled deeply. I was 72. I had lived long enough to know that some moments, if you do not stand up, you will never get another chance. I wiped my tears. Clarissa, I want to meet Brenda, she smiled. That is what I hoped you would say. That afternoon, Clarissa drove me to the prosecutor's office, a small cream-colored building near downtown, clean and modest. When I walked inside, my legs shook. I had never reported anyone, never imagined I would have to report my own son. Brenda was a woman in her 40s, with long black hair and glasses. Her eyes were sharp, but her voice warm. Mrs. Isabel, Brenda said after listening to Clarissa's summary, you do not need to be afraid. Elder abuse is a serious crime in Texas. If you confirm what happened, we can open a case immediately. I looked down at my thin, aging hands. Last night, he raised his hand to me twice. One slap, one punch. Brenda nodded, taking notes. Do you have evidence? Clarissa handed her the USB and the short video from the camera. Brenda watched carefully. When the image showed Mateo jerking my arm hard enough to nearly throw me off balance, she set the pen down, her face tightening. "This is enough for an emergency protection order," Brenda said. "It means once the judge signs it, Mateo is forbidden from coming within 300 feet of you. If he violates it, he will be arrested immediately." My mouth fell open. Are you sure?" "Absolutely," Brenda confirmed. "But before I file anything, I need you to answer one question." She looked straight into my eyes. "Do you want to keep living in fear? Or do you want to protect yourself?" The question pulled me directly into the present. Last night, I was on the floor from my son's punch. This morning, I apologized while still bruised. My granddaughter looked at me and Mateo with fear in her small eyes. I had endured enough. I took a deep breath. "Brenda, I want to file the report." Brenda smiled. "Good. I believe you have made the right decision." It took nearly an hour to complete the paperwork. When I signed the final document, Brenda said, "I will file this with the court this afternoon. The protection order will be active by tomorrow morning. You should stay with Clarissa tonight for safety." I nodded. But when we left the office, my heart raced in my chest. I had done something Mateo would never expect. I had pushed back. I, a 72-year-old mother, had stood up against the son I had spoiled more than I ever spoiled myself. As the car passed through the familiar streets of El Paso, I looked out the window. The sky was clearer than yesterday. The snow was melting, and inside me, something long frozen was starting to crack. I whispered to myself, "Isabel, the road ahead will not be easy, but at least this road belongs to you." I turned to Clarissa, my voice trembling. "Thank you for saving me." Clarissa smiled softly. "No, Isabel, you saved yourself. I only showed you the door." And for the first time in a very long while, I felt a small flame inside me. Not big, not strong, but alive. The flame of resistance. A flame Mateo never imagined I still carried after 72 years of life. That night, Clarissa refused to let me sleep alone in my own house, even when I told her I was fine. She drove me to her home, set up the living room for me, brought extra blankets, and made a cup of warm chamomile tea. Her house was only a few doors down from mine, but somehow, that night I felt as though I had traveled from a storm into a place of shelter. "Isabel, sleep here. I will lock the doors, turn the alarm on, and keep my phone by the bed," Clarissa said. I am troubling you too much," I answered, though my voice could not hide how grateful I was. "You are not troubling me. Being alone in this weather is dangerous, especially after everything you just went through." I lay down on the small bed and listened to the wind tapping lightly against the window. I thought I would not be able to sleep again. But whether it was exhaustion or the weight of the decision I had made that day, I drifted into sleep without realizing it. For the first time in years, I slept without jolting awake at the sound of Mateo's footsteps in the hallway or a door slamming shut. The next morning, while we were having breakfast, Brenda called Clarissa. Her voice came through the speaker. "The protection orders has been signed. It is effective starting at 9 this morning. Isabel will be protected for 30 days, and we are requesting an extension to 6 months. Mateo is forbidden from approaching her home, contacting her, or reaching her in any way. My hand trembled. The fork tapped the plate with a small metallic ring. But I swallowed. What if he shows up anyway? We will have patrol cars in your area for the first 48 hours. If he appears, all you need to do is call 911. Police will arrive within 3 minutes. 3 minutes. For the first time in my life, I had someone protecting me. I let out a shaky breath, even though my heart was pounding. Thank you. Thank you, Brenda. Do not thank me, Isabel. This is your right. Domestic violence is a crime. Elderly victims receive special protection. When she ended the call, I stared at my plate of eggs, unable to take a bite. My heart was racing, but not out of fear. It was something new, something strange. The feeling of the law standing on my side. Around 10, Clarissa drove me back to my house so I could gather some belongings. I hesitated at the door. The memory of the previous night still clung to me. But Clarissa stood beside me, and her presence steadied me. When I opened the door, a wave of cold rushed into my face. My house was still in the state of chaos that Mateo had left it in. Furniture pushed aside, things knocked over. He had torn everything up before leaving with Sophia. Seeing it made my heart ache, but at the same time, a quiet anger rose inside me. Isabel, are you all right? Clarissa asked. I nodded, even though my eyes burned. Let us grab only what you need. Tomorrow, we meet Brenda as planned. I was gathering clothes when the landline phone suddenly rang. I startled so badly, I dropped the nightgown in my hands. Clarissa stood right behind me. Do not answer it, she whispered. But the caller ID showed a number I had never seen before. It was not Mateo. It was from Northern Logistic Group. I frowned and decided to pick up. Hello, this is Isabel. Are you Mrs. Isabel Alvarez? I am Adrian Castillo, chief accountant at the company where your son Mateo works. I froze. What? What happened, Mr. Castillo? I need to meet you this afternoon regarding Mateo. My heart tightened. Did he do something? I cannot say over the phone, but it concerns you directly, and it could affect your legal situation if it is not addressed quickly. Legal situation. Me. A cold wave spread through my stomach. Can you explain? His tone was firm. We discovered several transactions on a joint account under your name that were executed by Mateo. We need you to come in and confirm them so you are not classified as an accomplice. Accomplice. I gripped the table to keep from collapsing. I did not know anything. I understand. That is why we need you here. 3 this afternoon. Main office. It is urgent, Mrs. Isabel. I looked at Clarissa, my face drained of color. I have to go. Clarissa nodded. I will go with you. At 3, we stepped into the large corporate building of Northern Logistic Group. Glass doors, bright lobby, the faint smell of expensive perfume. I felt like a scrap of paper blown into a world I did not belong to. Adrian welcomed us in a meeting room, a tired-looking but courteous man. Thank you for coming. Please sit. I sat with my hands clasped tightly. Mrs. Isabel, he began heavily, For the past 6 months, your son has withdrawn $42,000 from the joint account under your name. My eyes widened. No, I did not withdraw anything. I did not know. I believe you, but the bank does not care whether you knew. It is a joint account. Any activity counts as authorized by both parties. My breath wavered. I did not authorize anything. He had my password. I am old. I am not good with these things. Adrian nodded and handed me a stack of documents. We have evidence the account was used for unauthorized transfers. But after reviewing our internal cameras and system logs, we confirmed you were not involved. I nearly cried with relief. Adrian continued. However, under Texas law, you must sign a statement confirming you did not know and did not approve these transactions. If you do not, you will be considered a suspect, and the case becomes more complicated. My voice trembled. I will sign. I will sign anything you need. He slid the papers toward me. And one more thing. I lifted my head. We suspended Mateo this morning, and the company will file charges for financial exploitation of an elderly person. It is a serious offense in Texas. I could not breathe. My son. He had not only hit me, he had used my name to launder money, withdraw funds, and run illegal transactions. And now? He was about to be prosecuted. Clarissa placed her hand over mine. Adrian's voice softened. I know this is difficult, but you are not at fault. Mateo abused your trust. What we are doing is to protect you. I bowed my head. I signed the papers. I signed to free myself. And in doing so, I ended Mateo's time at the company. When we walked out of the building, the sky had turned orange with the setting sun. The light fell across Clarissa's face and softened everything. Are you all right, Isabel? She asked. I took a deep breath. I do not know. I understand, she said. But Isabel, this is justice. What Mateo did is not your doing. It is time he faced the consequences. I looked at the long road ahead. El Paso has never felt this cold, I said, my voice hollow. Clarissa gave a sad smile. But today, the sky seems clearer. I lifted my face. The wind was still cold, but my heart was different. Last night, I was a victim. This morning, I was forced to apologize. But this afternoon, the law stood on my side, not because I was strong, but because, at last, I dared to say no. And at 72, being able to say no to the child I loved most, that was a kind of justice I never thought I would live long enough to reach. That night, when I returned to Clarissa's house after the meeting with Mateo's company, I realized I was no longer the trembling woman from the night before. I was still tired, still in pain, still wincing every time I moved my mouth because the wound had not healed yet. But inside my chest, there was a new kind of emptiness, one that no longer felt as heavy as before. Perhaps people are right. When you dare to defend yourself, a part of your fear dies on its own. Clarissa set a steaming bowl of chicken soup in front of me. Eat a little, Isabel. You have not eaten anything since morning. I held the spoon, my hand still shaking. Clarissa, I do not know what I am supposed to feel anymore. About Mateo, she asked. I sighed. Yes, I feel hurt, relieved, guilty, angry. Everything. mixed together. Clarissa sat beside me and stayed quiet. She let me speak. I gave birth to him. I raised him with these two hands, all those years working overnight shifts in the geriatric ward and still coming home to take care of him. My voice wavered. I always thought I would die in a hospital bed because of old age, not die slowly from the pain my own son caused. Clarissa gently placed her hand over mine. Isabel, you are not the first mother who feels guilt for her child's actions. But remember this, you did not create the darkness in him. You only brought him into this world. I shook my head softly. I think part of the blame is mine. Why? Because I spoiled him too much. I took a long breath, as though pulling years of memory into my lungs. When Mateo was 2, his father died in an accident. I had to be both mother and father. I was afraid he would feel deprived, so I gave him everything he asked for. Clarissa nodded gently without judging. I bought him the most expensive shoes while I wore donated uniforms from the hospital. He wanted piano lessons, so I worked night shifts for 2 straight weeks. He wanted to play basketball, so I rearranged my schedules to take him. He wanted a bigger house, so I scraped together every dollar to buy the one he lives in now. My voice cracked. I always believed that if I loved him enough, he would grow up to be a good man. Clarissa sighed. Loving him was not wrong, Isabel. The mistake was forgetting to love yourself. I looked up at her, seeing a truth spoken aloud for the first time. Maybe I forgot myself for too many years, I whispered. Exactly, Clarissa said. And now it is time to find yourself again. That night, Clarissa let me go to bed early while she watched television in the living room. But I could not sleep. Memories rolled back through me like old films. I remembered Mateo at 7, clinging to my leg and crying because he did not get the red bicycle. I remembered when he was in 8th grade and I had to borrow money so he could go on a school trip. I remembered the year he applied for college, and I worked triple shifts so he could have a new computer. I remembered his graduation day when I stood under the Texas sun, clapping until my palms stung because I was so proud. And yesterday, he used those same hands I raised him with to hit me. What hurt the most was not the blow. It was his eyes that no longer recognized me as his mother. I turned on my side, trying to sleep, but the more I closed my eyes, the more the memories came back. The pain, the humiliation, the heartbreak. Around midnight, I stepped outside into Clarissa's front yard. The Texas winter night was cold, but the soft yellow streetlights and the rustling of the mesquite trees brought a strange calm. I stood there, inhaling deeply. I suddenly understood something. For the first time in many years, I stood in the wind without fear. For so long, I had lived like a shadow in Mateo's house, walking softly, speaking quietly, making no noise, avoiding his anger, avoid upsetting Camila, avoid letting Sophia see me being scolded. I had lived as though I were the one who was wrong. But in truth, I was the victim. At 72, that realization was both painful and liberating. The next morning, Brenda called and asked me to come to the district attorney's office to complete the files. Clarissa went with me. I did not tremble like I did the first day. I no longer avoided Brenda's eyes. I walked into the room and said, "I am ready." Brenda smiled. "Good. Today we finish an important step." I told her everything from the beginning. Nothing left out. Even the things I had hidden inside myself for 3 years. I told her about the first slap, about the day Mateo took my pension under the excuse of managing it for me, about the times I lied to neighbors to hide bruises, about the night he used his fist, about Sophia sitting alone in the snow. When I reached that part, my voice broke. Brenda handed me a box of tissues, nodding with the understanding of someone who had heard thousands of similar pains. Clarissa placed her hand on my back and rubbed gently. When I finished, Brenda closed the file. "Mrs. Isabel, you just did something many women need a lifetime to do." I wiped my tears. "What is that?" "Telling the truth." Brenda spoke slowly, each word firm. "And today is the day you redeem yourself." I blinked. "Redeem myself?" "Yes." Brenda's face grew serious. "You have spent years believing you were the one at fault. But the truth is, you were the victim of psychological, financial, and physical abuse. And now, you have done the thing a good heart must do. You protected yourself, and you protected Sophia." The name Sophia made my chest tighten. I whispered, "Can we save her?" Brenda nodded. "We are reviewing a separate case for unsafe living conditions for a child. If Mateo continues like this, his custody will be reevaluated." My chest loosened just a little, a small ray of hope, not just for me, but for Sophia. When we left the district attorney's office, Clarissa drove me back to my house to make sure everything was safe. The patrol cars were nearby. The protection order was active. But when I stepped inside my house, something felt different. For the first time, I saw it not as the place where Mateo controlled me, but as the place that belonged to me. Clarissa picked up my sweater from the floor, shook off the dust, and said, "Isabel, this is your home. You need to reclaim it, reclaim your life." I walked into the kitchen, the same place where I fell last night, where my blood hit the tiles, where I once trembled at the sound of keys turning in the lock. Now, I stood there and felt something else. No fear, only emptiness and determination. Clarissa asked softly, "What do you want now?" I lifted my head and looked at her. I took a long breath and said something I had never said to myself in 40 years as a nurse. "I want to live." Clarissa smiled proudly, like an older sister. "Good. Then we start today." I looked around the house. I want to clean this place. I want to throw away everything that belongs to Mateo. I want to start over. Clarissa wrapped her arms around me. "You will not do it alone. I am here. Brenda is here. The law is here. And Sophia, she is the biggest reason for you to be strong." I held Clarissa tightly, my old hands gripping her shoulders as if finding a new anchor. And I knew this was my first moment of redemption. I was no longer the woman who got hit and stayed silent. No longer the woman who apologized to the one who hurt her. No longer the woman who hid in fear. I was Isabel Alvarez, 72 years old, a mother, a grandmother, a woman who stood up. I had not won yet. I was not completely safe. I was not free from everything. But I had crossed the line between fear and freedom. And at 72, that was worth more than anything I had ever done in my life. 2 weeks after the day I signed the papers at the district attorney's office, my life changed in ways I never imagined I would witness at 72. It was not loud, and there were no triumphant shouts. It was a gentle, gradual change, like the first sunlight after a long, frozen winter. I began by cleaning my house, one item at a time, one shelf, one corner of the kitchen. I opened every window so the cold wind could sweep away the lingering scent of pain. Clarissa helped me. She removed every photo of Mateo from childhood to adulthood, the pictures that made me feel like a failure each time I looked at them. She placed them neatly into a cardboard box and moved it to the storage room. When we reached the photo of Mateo hugging me at his college graduation, the only picture where he smiled genuinely, I paused. My heart tightened. Clarissa waited silently. I breathed in and said softly, "Keep it, but put it in the box. I am not ready to look at it, but I am not ready to throw it away either." Clarissa nodded. "That is already a big step, Isabel." She was right. Letting go, while accepting that good memories and painful ones can coexist, was a kind of healing. 2 weeks passed in an unfamiliar peace. No, Mateo pounding on the door. No shouting, no shadows lurking in my mind when the sun went down. The protection order was active, and sometimes patrol cars drove past my home. I forced myself to relearn everything. I learned how to drive again through busy streets. I learned how to order groceries online without needing my son. I learned how to open a new bank account, reset passwords, and manage my own money. Things others considered normal. Felt like doors opening into freedom. One evening, while reviewing my electric bill, I burst into tears because I could do it by myself, without anyone controlling me, without living under anyone's orders. I called Clarissa over for hot cocoa. "Clarissa," I said, "my life has never been this quiet." She leaned back in her chair and smiled. "That is because this house only holds your voice now, not anyone else's shouting." She was right. The silence in my home was no longer frightening. It was peaceful. 3 weeks later, something happened that I never expected. That morning, Brenda called. "Isabel, the court has reviewed the filings. Mateo has been taken into custody pending trial. The company submitted all the evidence. And there is one more piece of news." I held my breath. "What is it, Brenda?" "Camilla has withdrawn from joint custody with Mateo. She admitted he was violent at home. Child Protective Services has opened a safety case for Sophia." I felt lightheaded. "Then, what about Sophia?" "For now, she is with Camilla. But if the situation worsens, custody may be transferred to you." I nearly collapsed. I could have custody of Sophia. It is a real possibility. The court will evaluate your age and circumstances, but you are the only person who has kept her safe." I did not answer right away. I had to hold onto the table to steady myself. Sophia, my little granddaughter who had watched Mateo hit me, might finally live in a home free from danger, free from fear. I am ready," I said. Brenda's voice softened. "I believe you are." That afternoon, I walked around the neighborhood. The Texas sun was warm without the bitter cold of the past weeks. I watched the mesquite trees sway in the wind and heard children playing nearby. Then I saw Sophia. She stood in front of Camilla's yard in a pink sweater, holding a tiny doll, her dark eyes scanning the street. When she saw me, her eyes widened, and she ran toward the fence. "Abuela!" Her voice was soft but full of joy. I bent down and smiled. "Sophia." She reached her little hand through the fence and touched mine. "Abuela, I missed you." Those words broke something inside me. "I missed you too, cariño," I said. Camila appeared at the door, her expression tired, but no longer cruel. "I am letting her say hello for a few minutes," she said quietly. I looked at Camilla longer than I expected. Her eyes no longer held the sharpness of someone judging me. They were the eyes of someone who had lost something important and knew she had been wrong. "Thank you, Camilla," I said. She lowered her head. "I am sorry, Mrs. Isabel." I was stunned. That apology, I had waited 3 years for it. "I know Mateo hit you. I saw it a few times, but I was scared." Her voice cracked. "I wanted to leave, but I had no family here. I was weak. But when the snow incident happened, I realized I had crossed the line." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "Camila, I do not blame you." She wiped her eyes. "I want Sophia to have real family. If the court allows it, I want her to spend more time with you, stay over, or have weekends." I nodded, my lips trembling. "I will always take her. Always." That night, when I returned home, I walked into the kitchen, the place where the worst night of my life had unfolded, and turned on every light. The room grew warm and bright. No darkness, no shadows. I opened a drawer, took out a clean towel, and placed it on the table. I touched the edge of the counter, where my face had struck that night. Then I breathed deeply and said to myself, "Isabel, this is no longer where the pain began. This is where freedom begins." I took a pen and paper. I wrote a note and stuck it to the refrigerator. "No one has the right to silence me." And another, "I deserve love, even at 72. The handwriting was shaky, imperfect, but those were words I had never dared to tell myself. The next day, Clarissa asked me to go to the market. I agreed. For the first time in years, I walked into El Paso's shops without fearing anyone would notice bruises on my face. The bruises had faded. I no longer hid them. I bought scented candles for the house, new bedding for Sophia's room, flowers for the kitchen. Clarissa laughed. "Buying so much today." I laughed too. "I am preparing for Sophia. Her room should be beautiful." "Isabel, you are coming back to life," Clarissa said proudly. "I have never seen you shine like this." I turned to her. That is true. I am coming back to life. When the sun set that evening, I stood in my front yard and watched the warm orange light stretch across the rooftops. The wind carried the scent of El Paso dust and the smell of grilled meat from the neighbor's yard. I inhaled deeply, feeling something inside me, something Mateo had crushed for so many years, return to its place. I lifted my face to the last rays of sunlight. I thought of Sophia, of the future, of the clean, peaceful home waiting behind me, of Clarissa and Brenda, two women who had become my real family in ways Mateo never could. And I thought of myself. I was no longer the woman who sat trembling in the dark, waiting for her son to calm down. I was no longer the mother who endured abuse to keep a false peace. I was no longer the person who was beaten and still forced to apologize. I was Isabel Alvarez. I was 72, and I had reclaimed my life. Tomorrow, the legal battle with Mateo would continue. Tomorrow, I will go to court. Tomorrow, I would face the eyes of the son who had terrified me for years. But today, I was free. And after a lifetime in the shadows, I finally understood. Freedom is not the absence of fear. Freedom is standing tall even while fear still lingers. I placed my hand on my chest. I did it, I whispered, and the soft El Paso wind carried those words away. Witnessing the rebirth of a 72-year-old woman who had finally learned to love herself. If you enjoyed this story, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts on the story in the comments. To hear the next story, click the box on the left. Thanks for watching.